So this is the second episode of All My Friends Need Therapy. I'm here with Chris. Chris, if you want to just give us a little rundown of who you are.
Sure. My name is Chris Busone. I run a company called Captain Cook's Food out of New York. It's a food company that I produce hot sauce and spice rubs. Um, and I also cater and I cook. I do I have a podcast called Spicy Memories. I have another podcast called Five Ingredients as well. Um, and I've been on this journey of slowly integrating myself into the world of food in a non-traditional way, I guess you would say, which I've been pretty open about, which I think is important because I love food more than anything, and I love the food business, and I love the people in the food business for the most part, and I think that for a long time there was only like two vocalized avenues that people were able to go into food. It was like either you become a line cook and
Mhm.
just work your way up and just hate your life for a while and don't have a social life, or go to culinary school and then try to, work in a kitchen. And I'm like, there are other ways to enter the food business that people don't realize. And like, I just found a way that worked for me, and I did it on my own terms in my own time because I have a life and a wife. And, I wanted to keep at least some remnants of my life, but also work in food and still keep a 9 to 5 job for the time being, at least. That will probably not be there forever, but yeah. So that's that's what I've been doing recently. So
Yeah, it sounds like you're a very, very busy person and kind of have your hand everywhere.
I try, because at least if you ever hand in a bunch of jars, one of them is going to have hopefully something good, right? I mean, it's like it's hard.
Yeah,
You can't do everything well always, but yeah. I mean, I've found a few things that really make me happy that I love, which I try to hang on to. So
absolutely. So one thing I like to do to get kind of like get the temperature of the room and kind of get us started is just kind of a give me a feeling word to kind of describe your current mood, emotion.
my current mood emotion, I would say curious.
Curious. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know why. I'm in a very curious mood right now.
I love
This is
that.
probably a good night for me to be on a podcast. So,
No, I
because
love that.
some nights it's not. It's good that you didn't get me on night that I'm all like jixed up and shit. Because usually I'm like, yeah, usually I'm like talking a mile a minute. I can curse on here, right? We can
You can
curse.
do
It doesn't
whatever
matter.
you want.
All right, I already did, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, you already
Um,
did.
but yeah, I'd say curious. So
Awesome. And then another thing that I do is kind of on a scale of 1 to 10, where do you feel your wellness is at right now?
like physical or mental?
Uh, Mental. Let's go mental.
um. I'm seeing numbers that are not translating to the English language and mathematical statistics, but
Gotcha.
I guess for the public, I'll go with a cool 7. I'd say.
7. Okay.
Yeah,
7,
maybe.
that's not bad though.
Yeah. It's just it's from somebody who has always had problems calming down at night, I guess you could say.
Okay.
So I've been trying to do that recently. I mean, my problem, I've been having sleeping issues for like years. I can't, like, my wife can go into the bed at like 9 p.m. and shut the lights off, turn her phone off, and like she may not fall asleep right away, but within a certain amount of time she'll be asleep. When I try and do that, it makes me like more awake because I get extremely just like, whatever. And so for a long time I would, just drink before bed until I was, had enough to knock me out.
Right.
And then, recently I just kind of like, I got like a vape pen and I watched TV and I kind of calmed down my entire night for a
Okay.
while after I'm done with all my stuff. And then it's late. It's usually about like 1 when that happens, but I can at least get 5 hours of sleep. And I've noticed that it's something that helps me at night is a little bit of just like quiet time, I guess you could say. So
Yeah, for sure. And then like, finding that routine that works, I think
right,
is essential to that. And I think,
right.
your
I
wife
mean,
has her
watching
routine.
TV and smoking weed is not exactly like a MythBusters kind of a
Right.
hack, but like, but it's not even that. I mean, I just I have to say too. I don't know if this is a 420 friendly podcast or not, but I was taking edibles for a while,
Hmm.
and that was working kind of, but also like sometimes the edibles would just hit different, and you
Right.
basically have to wait until it kicks in. So like some nights I'd wait like the 45 minutes or whatever, and then it would kick in and I'd be like, wow, this is just not a good time. I'd be
Right.
like,
Yeah.
this is, I was like, this is not fun. Like there were a few nights I was like leaning against the wall in my hallway trying to remember what direction to breathe in. Like I was like, no,
Right.
no, man, you got to breathe in through the nose first and then out through the mouth. And I was like, yeah. So once I stopped doing the edibles that much, I was like, this is better. You can
Right.
just pace yourself.
Finding a better routine made sense.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
One thing I want to circle back to is that you mentioned, um, you had mentioned kind of breaking into the industry in different ways, not in that traditional way of coming up as a line cook or,
Right.
the traditional way. Can you talk a little bit about your journey to get to where you are now, where you're feeling like you're kind of breaking into the world of cooking in that way?
Well, I mean, because I started getting more into cooking around, I mean, I've been cooking since I was like 9. My dad, one of the first things he really taught me, even before I was heavy into sports. I mean, I was always into sports and stuff, but then all of a sudden, cooking was like a thing that we used to do together. And then he taught me how to use like a real chef's knife when I was like 10. He was like, this is like a real chef's knife. Like you could easily fucking hurt yourself. You need to learn how
Right.
to use this though. Um, and he taught me a lot of good stuff, and that's when I started loving cooking. And until then I just kind of did it as a thing. Like I was one of my only friends that could cook the way I did, and I just kind of did whatever. The first was the 1 month anniversary of when I first started dating my wife, I just cooked her like spaghetti out at my house, like stuff like that. It was like I just cooked. And then around about 2014-15, I saw the movie Chef with John Favreau,
Okay.
and I also started listening to a lot of Action Bronson, and those two combined sparked this feeling inside of me that I was like, I feel like this is a world that I want to like live in.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started really cooking a lot and posting recipes, and like I started the Captain Cook's Food Instagram, and a couple years after that is when I started getting into hot sauce a little bit. But I was also in the middle of finishing my degree in film,
Okay.
and I didn't want to just stop and work in a kitchen, obviously. And I also had a job, and I still do have a job that's not related to food, because I do that, but then I do food, every moment pretty much that I'm not at that job.
Right.
But I didn't want to start a 4-year degree at a culinary school or a 2-year degree over again just to come out and possibly work close to minimum wage, or I didn't want to work as a line cook, which there's nothing against line cooks. Like I know line cooks and I know people that have been promoted as line cook, but it's a hard life. And I've been very open about the fact that that I'm like a home cook, and I have honed my skills to where I'm better than I think I'm better than average as compared to most people who cook, but like I'm not by any means like a chef de cuisine in like a brick and mortar restaurant.
Right.
Um, it's just a different kind of animal. And then when I started catering more, that was when I really got comfortable in like a commercial kitchen. And now it's like I cook at home, and I'm just like, where's all my shit? I'm just like, I'm like looking around. So I think it was born out of me not wanting to only have those two options, and also maybe keep some remnants of my life a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's like finding, especially now with the age of social media, and especially being in New York, right? Like I lived there for 27 years. So I know what it's like to go to
Did you live
Brooklyn.
in the city, or were you outside of the city?
I lived in Queens. So
Oh,
I
you lived
grew
in
up
Queens.
in,
Okay.
yeah, I grew up in Flushing, Queens.
Nice.
And
Flushing is fucking awesome.
right. I
Has
mean,
Flushing has one of the most diverse food cultures.
absolutely.
Like the Asian food cultures that are there, specifically like some of the Korean
Yeah.
culture, it's incredible. Like it's unbelievable in Queens. And Queens also has like amazing pizza. I think there's a place in Flushing called Danny's, Dani Pizzeria.
Mm.
Um, and it's like any other place in one of the boroughs. It's run by a bunch of Albanians, and it's amazing. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, I love Queens. So
No,
continue.
yeah, no, I'm right there with you. It's one of those things where, like, I mean, growing up in Queens, you like, especially Flushing, I used to take the bus for Main Street, and it was one of those things where that was the mecca of like these secret food places that no one knew, right? Like you'd go down an alley, down a flight of stairs to this little tiny thing that was, no one knew about. And that's
Right.
kind of, I think, when we look at social media and how people consume now, do you feel that it's a lot easier to kind of break in and do the things that you're doing, like the hot sauces and the rubs, and breaking in without doing the degree track, because you can reach a broader audience because of social media?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of debate over this, but I think that it doesn't have to be one or the other. I think that the
Right.
people that want to be a chef de cuisine in like a restaurant, they need to go one of those two routes. They need to know what it's like to be in a kitchen full time. And, that's fine. My thought on it is I am a huge advocate for social media as far as breaking into stuff like this, because everything good that has come to me and people that I've met and connected with, friends that I have, like, some of my closest friends are people that I still to this day haven't even met in person,
Right.
and like, one of my good friends is a podcaster in Canada, like literally. So like I think that I'm a huge advocate for social media because it connects people that you never would have, thought otherwise to connect with. And it helps you break into an industry by connecting with people that you maybe wouldn't just walk into their restaurant and talk to, etc. I mean, even the local food scene here. This one chef that I became very good friends with, her name is Melissa. She's been an executive chef for like 20 years, and we found each other on Instagram, and then I found out that she lived 3 minutes from my apartment in the next town over. And then that's when we, finally started working together and met up in person and stuff. And she really helped me break into the local food industry around here, like a lot. So, but that still sparked from social media, even though she lived 3 minutes away. Like I never would have known she existed if it wasn't for that. So, yeah, I think in my case specifically, but also I do think it's an option for people who want to go that kind of a route. Like social media, it can be extremely vital to breaking into an industry that you want if you do it correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of, it breaks down a lot of barriers. Like you said, like normally you wouldn't necessarily walk into a Michelin star restaurant and go and talk to the head chef,
Yeah,
knock on that
walk into
door.
one of those restaurants and just walk into the kitchen and see what happens.
Right.
Like,
Like you wouldn't normally do that, but social media, I mean, in your industry, in a lot of different industries, kind of breaks down that wall, and it gives you like that one-to-one access to a
right.
lot of people that those people who you're trying to access didn't have when they were coming up.
Right.
But now there's that access, and it kind of changed the game, like you said, where you're able to have someone who was an executive chef for 20 years become one of your good friends, and I'm sure you're able to bounce ideas off of each other, talk to each other,
All the time. Yeah.
and do things like that.
I actually ended up cooking with her. I mean, I was helping her with her meal prep business when she first launched it.
Right.
And up until this winter, pretty much, it slowed down a little bit because I got busy and she moved kitchens and stuff. But I mean, her business is like booming now, which is great. But yeah, I was cooking with her for 10 hours a day at some points. Like it was literally just the two of us for her 35 meal orders in the kitchen,
Right.
So it was, and she and this other local chef really got me into catering and
Okay.
showed me what it was like and how 99.9% of catering is just prep, literally, and being prepared and being organized and having everything ready. And I don't know, it's just I think you're right. It definitely helped break down maybe some hesitancies that people have to communicate with people like that in the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it translates so well to a lot of people. I know, like, recently Twitter's been a big thing for me as far as connecting with people in my own industry, and just kind of reaching out to people you like never would have normally reached out to, right? Like I
Right.
would
Yeah,
have never,
exactly.
I don't normally come out of my shell and reach out to people. Obviously the computer and the phone make it a little easier to say
Right.
hello and introduce yourself.
Right.
So it is really something, it could be used for very terrible things, but it also
Yeah.
could be used as a vehicle to further yourself, further an industry.
But see, people say that all the time, but you could say that about anything. You could say the same thing about
right,
a chef knife. A chef knife could be used to cook the tastiest meal you've ever had. You could also murder somebody. So
right,
it's like, it's like not to be that guy, but like it's true. Like anything has duality, I think.
right.
And
Yeah.
so like I think people forget that. Like it's not always so just black and white, and um but yeah, I mean it is true because social media, I think what you're saying is true because it gives people access all over the place of any background, of any age. If they lie about their age, there's no way for social media places to really verify it half the time, so it's just, it can be pretty demonstrous in certain situations, but it also can be amazing. And I think I've gotten the benefit of it as far as, it's caused me some issues in the past as far as like, caring about how I come off maybe, which
Hmm.
I've kind of lowered those inhibitions recently, because I just don't care anymore. But yeah, it forces you to kind of look at yourself, which is never fun. I mean, you'll love this because my my film degree, as I've talked about this before, my film degree is not just like wasn't me shooting in a camera. It was a psychoanalytic approach into cinema.
Okay.
So it was me studying Jacques Lacan and Freud and incorporating it into like modern cinema and basically talking about why, how our brains work while we watch films.
Hmm.
And what that caused me to do was realize that a lot of these things that, Jacques Lacan even had come up with in the 19th century or whenever it was, of like, the mirror stage and, the creation of the id, it's
Right.
like that kind of, it really does apply to a lot of stuff. And social media kind of forces people to do that because if you had, by some fucking miracle, been so unaware up until that point that there was this version of you that the world sees that's
Right.
not what you see, that like that's why it's called the mirror stage. For those of you listening, I mean, I don't have to tell Daniel that he knows, but like but I by the way, I thought your name was like Dr. Ronaldo because your thing is DR, like
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
use it Ronaldo. Yeah. So I was like, is it Dr. Ronaldo? Like I was like, because I knew also you
No.
were a concert. I was like, okay. But like, the mirror stage, for those of you who don't know, is a theory that Jacques Lacan put forward, I think in like the late 1800s, right? Or something like that, where
Yeah, I
he
believe
was
so.
basically from a baby anywhere between ages 6 and 18 months. It's the first time that the kid like sees itself in the mirror. And
Hmm.
what that does is it creates the id because it's the first time that the child can comprehend like, oh shit, there's a version of me that's not just what I look down at. Like there's a version
Right.
of me that the world sees. And like that's the id that's created. And I think social media kind of does a version of that. And if by some miracle people had been maybe subconsciously only realizing that and then it really came to the forefront, I think that's what causes a lot of people's like anxiety with social media and stuff like that too. So um it definitely is a weird platform to navigate around, I think. But
Yeah, but I mean, it seems like you're doing it right as far as creating podcasts, creating a
yeah.
brand, something that you yourself is passionate about, but also something that other people can kind of gravitate towards. One thing I'm curious about
Yeah.
is you had mentioned catering. Now, I've had a million parties in my life. So my only experience with catering is the Italian place down the block is bringing in, tray after tray and putting them on the little sterno fire things. But what goes in to catering, what I'm sure you're catering are events. I can't imagine that being an easy task, even though like a lot of it is prep, you're able to do a lot, but I can't imagine that being something that is an easy task for any cook.
No, because you're right. Most of it is prep. And like you prep things that you can then reheat later. It's everything is
Mm-hmm.
just prepping things so that you can just reheat them, plate them nice, and get them out. That's what it is you're prepping the stuff for that. So like I just catered a party. I think last weekend I was catering out of a food truck for this local place where I make my hot sauce, and I yeah, one of the prep cooks had made me like chimichurri short rib like mix. So it was like
Mm-hmm.
chimichurri with shredded short rib all mixed, and I was able to reheat it, put it on a slider, and then I topped it with pickled red onions and some hot honey and like on a Hawaiian king's roll, like stuff like that to make like a
Right.
tray of sliders, right? So like a lot of it is just knowing what you're going to do ahead of time, which is nice because the people always pick ahead of time. You're not just going in blind.
Right.
Which is also not true because people just have last minute requests, like the last fucking party I just worked. So, but yeah, it's mainly that. It's also like being realizing that most of the people are gonna care about the catering, but this is gonna sound so fucking mean, but you care about it more than anybody at that party. Like people
Right.
at that party are there to eat food that maybe they didn't pay for, or maybe it's for an event, or maybe they're just gonna pick it off the fucking tray because they've had 3 scotches already and they just need something in their stomach. So like
Right.
that can easily bring somebody down because like I'll take a nice like bamboo tray, right? And I'll layer these like, beautiful skewers with, cherry tomatoes and mozzarella and, basil. And I'll put like a balsamic glaze on top of it and I'll make it look real nice. And I know that people are just literally taking them and going whoosh, and
Yeah.
just eating them. And that can easily deter some people from like wanting to put in more effort, I guess. But
Right.
I love that. I love the plating. I love putting things out for display. It almost is a little more satisfying than actually eating. Like it really is. Like I think I recently did an interview for an online magazine out of Arizona, and that was one of the questions was like, "What do you really love about food?" And I was like, "I love feeding people. Like
Right.
I love food and I love eating clearly, but like I love feeding people. Like I love it. I don't know why. Like I don't know why. Like I care more about how like the food tastes for like my wife when she eats like my dinners than like what I think, because like I'm always going to be biased and I'm always going to think I could do better or do something wrong or like whatever. But like
Right.
I don't know. I love feeding people. It's just it's one of the best feelings.
Well,
And
it's like I think it's an art, right? Like it's one of those things where it's like the painter paints and then they put it out there to the world, and it's an extension of them, and it's an extension of all of the work that they've done up until then. So when you're, I'm not gonna lie, I'm that guy with the skewer that's,
yeah.
that's stealing 12 of them off of the bamboo platter
Oh
before
yeah.
anyone else gets in them. You have bacon wrapped scallops, I'm all for it, like,
Yeah, man.
so it's one of those things.
I've
But
never made those, by the way. That is one thing that is so talked about in catering. Like bacon wrap scallops is like almost like a joke. Like that's always expected
right,
with like catering, and I have never made one. The one thing that is always at every fucking catering party that I do, no matter how big or small, and the one thing that goes quicker than anything I prepare, no matter how much work I put in, are fucking pigs in the blanket.
right,
People
yeah,
love the little fucking cocktail weenies. I don't know why. It's like maybe because people. I literally was having this conversation with my wife. I'm like, I don't get it. Like I was preparing like chimichurri short ribs at this party, and I was doing like I did macerated strawberries that I mixed with some hot honey and some sugar, and then let it get all nice and syrupy. Smeared it on top of a crostini. Put some balsamic glaze and fresh shredded basil. Like that's fucking delicious, right? Like, and
right,
those were coming back. Like people picked them, but I'll put out a tray of literally just fucking pigs in a blanket that you heat up, and I made like a mustard relish sauce with it, and it's just empty every time. And I'm like, well, I have no more. I don't know what like they. So it's every single time.
I think, and I could be completely wrong, right? But like, and I don't know anything about that line of that stuff, but I wonder how much of that is like a nostalgia thing,
It's because
you
we
know?
never get to, who the fuck is gonna come home
Right,
and be
yeah,
like as opposed to making grilled chicken with veggies for dinner, be like, I got a real treat for us tonight, sweetie, and you pull out a box of fucking pigs in the blanket.
yeah, pigs in a blanket,
It would give a weird feeling. They'd be like, I don't want to eat that for dinner. Like, but for
right,
some reason, when you're out and about, it's one of those things where like I feel like nobody makes it because why the
right.
fuck would you, right? Like nobody makes that because it's like it's fun. You could do it, but it's so much work, and they're this big. Like, get the fuck no, just get the fucking
Yeah,
frozen box. Like,
yeah.
Jesus.
I think there's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot to be said for that. Like, I think a lot of people will eat things out as opposed to cooking in like corn dogs, right? I will buy a corn dog at any stand
Yeah,
that exists
yeah.
when I'm not, but I will never buy them and eat them in my own house.
No,
Like I'll never make them. I'll never like take the time to make my own.
we bought corn dogs in all the years that we've lived together. I think my wife got a craving for them once, and I think we bought one box, and we had a few, and then we were like, we don't really want anymore after, and it's literally, and that was it. And we've lived together for like 5 years now, so it's just
Yeah,
like, it's like, Yeah, I agree. That's just something. That's something you would never have in your own house. You
Yeah.
certainly wouldn't fucking make it. I'm not making that stupid batter and baking it and putting
Right.
a
Yeah, of course.
little popsicle stick in it. No, I don't have time
Yeah.
for that. Like, no, especially weekday dinners, because we split the cooking. My wife and I. Like, she cooked tonight, but I also cook even if I come home from work and stuff. And you can't make a goddamn fucking. It's a hang tight. Hope you got 3
Yeah.
hours. I'm gonna make us a corn dog. Like, no, like that's it. No. So
Yeah. So I really think, like, when you were talking about like the plating and putting that tray out, I think, for the most part, like most art, it's kind of like that extension of you, and that, like, that want for someone to like look at that and go, oh, look at that. So
yeah.
work, it's a work. And a lot of times when you see plates come out, at restaurants or in certain places, you're looking at it going like, you almost feel bad eating it.
I mean, that's
You
certain things I love plating, like especially when I'm catering. I like plating when I'm here even, right? Like if I post stuff that I eat here, it's not always the prettiest, but sometimes I try to make it look like, nice. Like that photo I just posted today of the basted egg.
Mhm.
It was surrounded by all the chili oil and stuff, but I wiped the edge of the plate like they do for the food photos to make it nice and white. So
Right.
you just saw the oil. Like I like doing that stuff even when I'm at home. And so doing that on a large scale for sometimes 250 people, which I've done, is, that's not fun, but,
Right.
it's a lot of work. But yeah, I don't know. I love that. Especially I've done a couple weddings at this point, and, yeah, what you had said earlier, you touched upon this. I think that it's part of like you being able to connect with the person that you're feeding in
Mhm.
some way. You're giving a part of your creativity to the person that you're feeding. And you also kind of have free range to do whatever you want. I think it depends on where you work and what chef you're working for. I mean, the executive chef where I cater at this place called Hayfields, he'll let me, he knows that he likes me as a cook. And he's watched me kind of get a little bit better. And he was one of the first people in the area, along with that other chef, Melissa, that really helped me break into the scene. So for him, if I want to, I was like, I was thinking for, this, I could, shred up some of whatever. He's like, yeah, man, go, like, do it. Like he's like totally, he's giving me kind of free range to be a little more creative, and that doesn't always happen. But when it does, it allows you to feel even better about serving the people your food, because you're like, this was literally like, I'm like, seeing an empty tray come back is annoying because usually I'm like, shit, I didn't heat up more of it, but
Right.
I have to give them something else now. But it's one of the best feelings ever, like seeing just completely cleared plate. Like I love that. So
Yeah, I would imagine that freedom and that trust, from executive chefs or whoever's kind of leading the charge there, is a fantastic thing. It kind of gives you, like you said, that creativity, but it also it makes you feel like you're valued, especially where you're saying like, I didn't come up the way these other people have come up. So for
right,
someone to look at me and go, you got it, man,
right,
go do what you do. I
yeah,
want you. I don't want cookie cutter. I don't want that. I want what you bring to the plate.
right.
That
Which is
must
amazing.
feel
It's
important.
Yeah, especially like the chef Paul. He the guy who I do a lot of the catering with. He worked for Anthony Bourdain at La Halle
Mm,
in the '90s and shit. I mean, he's had a long 25-year career in cooking, and or more than that at this point. And but he does not have that ego that executive chefs kind of have.
right.
And so that's the main thing, is like being able to let go of that, to where he has given me a place to cook my hot sauce. He helped me encourage to make it more. And he's given me insight into what it's like being in a commercial kitchen. And, you know, it, working in a brick and mortar kitchen as part of a staff and doing that full time, it requires you to be a different kind of a person.
Hmm.
Like that's a whole other discipline of, you know, being able to work under pressure and being able to not just break down and being able to be extremely organized and clean and efficient. And I'm not saying that I'm not, but I've said this before. I feel like I'm like 80% sure I'd be able to hack it as a line cook. I would not be the best line cook in the world, I don't think, because
Right.
it just requires a certain level of skill that it beats the shit out of people. It really does. And so when you're able to do that as a profession and excel in it, it really says something about how you are as a person. did not go that route. And I still to this day say all the time how much respect I have for kitchen staff, specifically line cooks and prep cooks, because, you know, the executive chef runs around and he makes sure that everything is kind of going. The sous chef is usually the one that's cooking half the time. But the line cooks and the prep cooks work their fucking ass off. And you could be on the line and your whole station could just be dicing fucking onions for like
Right.
7 hours, literally.
That's my
And
worst nightmare.
yeah, but like if you can do that and find some pleasure in it and realize that you're doing it for a reason, because every little bit does matter in kitchens
Right.
like that. Not every kitchen. Some places you go to eat and you're like, what the fuck is this? But in restaurants where it matters, like it really matters, you know? So
Yeah, for sure. I would imagine there's a lot of mental health that goes into being a cook, working in the restaurant industry. I mean, we've seen it time and time again.
The go-to is usually, you know, go in the walk-in and cry. That's like,
yeah,
like that's my friend Melissa, actually. She's like, she literally has a shirt that says go cry in the walk-in. Like, you know, so it's not that you just completely lose your stress or inhibitions. Like it's there. You just kind of don't have a choice. You need to still just power through and do it because there's people waiting who want to eat. I mean, so it's one of the few industries where you don't, it's like being a doctor. Like if you're a surgeon, if you have anxiety for some reason, or you have, you know, something that can stop you from doing what you need to do, or, you know, you get, as the golfers call them, the yips, you know,
right.
You can't let that stop you from doing what you need to do, you know, and that's not always the case in some scenarios for a lot of jobs. You know, I mean, if you're like an accountant or, you know, like you work at a behind desk 9 to 5, like you're not always under that gun necessarily.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so, you know, it's just, it's a different kind of lifestyle, and it's not saying it's better than others. It's just different. And, yeah, it definitely requires a strong, will to continue even through mental health, because it's not to say that people that are in kitchens and line cooks and like stuff like that are better at handling their mental health, because a lot of them are not. A lot of people in the
Right.
industry just end up, you know, just drinking their fucking face off to help with it. But which is totally true. But it's not that they're better. It's just they're the people that are like, I don't have time for that right now. And
Right.
that's why if they were to answer that initial question you had, you know, the number, if it was on the scale at all, would be a lot lower than a 7, I think.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
that's just again, they do it for a different reason though. You know, it's like you are doing it because it's what you want to do, you know. And
Absolutely.
the people that don't really want to do it, they don't last anyway, so they don't end up staying in kitchens. So
Right.
you know.
But if anyone's watching this and you are struggling in the industry, reach out to somebody, anybody. Don't go at it alone, because there's always someone there for you for sure. And even if you can't find anyone, reach out on social media, because you will find someone who will take care of you.
Always.
But one thing I heard you mention, and I already put my order in, was hot sauce. I want to hear about it because I'm not much of a hot sauce person. I'll get a hot sauce if someone is creating it, someone, you know, some influencer is like, oh, look at this hot sauce I made, and I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting. They put all of these things together. How did that come about? How did the hot sauce come about? I know it's very in right now, as far as like in, I'm a big, and I don't know how you feel about this show, but I'm a big Hot Ones guy.
Oh yeah, no, I've met Sean Evans, so
Yeah, like I think that interview process is amazing, and
everybody who
watching.
goes on it, no, but the reason that interview process is amazing is because he asks real
Yeah, he
questions. Like
does. He's got great
does
questions.
fucking research. And it's funny because a girl that I graduated with, Anna, she's actually a producer now at Complex, but she started as the assistant editor on Hot Ones for season 1. And
Oh wow.
so that first season that it was on, I had been watching it because I was like, are you fucking kidding me? I'm like, this is the best show I've ever seen. And then we actually connected like 8 months after we graduated. And she sent me a link and she was like, oh, check this out. This is the show that I'm the assistant editor on. And it was fucking Hot Ones. I'm like, are you joking? I was
Yeah,
like, are you
right.
serious?
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think she's a producer actually at Complex now, which is great. But yeah, I met Sean at the New York City Hot Sauce Expo. I took a picture with him. I talked to him a little bit. Super nice guy. But yeah, his interview format is brilliant because getting people to do gradually hotter wings as you ask more intense questions, doing deep
Yeah.
dives into people's interviews, like whoever the research team is for Hot Ones and
Yeah. It's
Complex
insane.
is brilliant. And I love Hot Ones, and their sauces ours, I've gotten sauces. Like the reason, okay, so that show inadvertently got me to create my hot
Okay.
sauce. It's good that you brought that up, actually. So the first season, maybe the second season, something like that, there was a hot sauce on there. I think they have another one now from that company, but it's a company out of Brooklyn, or maybe Long Island City, actually, in Queens, called Queen Majesty hot sauce.
Okay. I think
Queen
I've heard of
Mag-
them.
they're a great hot sauce company, and the bottle that they had initially on the show was black coffee red habanero.
Okay.
And I was like, ooh, so my wife and I got it because she eats just as much hot sauce as I do. Um, and we blew through the bottle so quick, but it was really like sharp. It was black coffee and red habanero. So it was just very fucking visceral in your mouth. You know, it was like right there. And there was
Mm-hmm.
no brightness. There was no like fruitiness to kind of like lighten the load a little bit. Right. And so I wanted that coffee influence in there, but I wanted a different flavor. So my sauce is a mango coffee habanero.
Okay.
But I use champagne mangoes. I use Cafe Bustelo, usually espresso, unless I'm working with a coffee company, in which case I'll use theirs to make them custom hot sauce because I also do that. Um, and orange habaneros specifically. I don't use anything other than orange habaneros because orange habaneros have a fruity, waxy skin, not like
Okay.
red habaneros. Red habaneros are great for certain things. They're a sharp spice, but orange habaneros have this like fruitiness to them a little bit. And so when you're using it with fruit, the heat, you know, I call it sweet heat. It really complements it very well. And so that sauce that we got because of that show is what got me to, you know, create my hot sauce basically. And nobody else really makes a mango coffee habanero hot sauce that I've seen online. So this is going to be recorded in history forever. So I'd like to put that out there to the public that I've been doing research and I think I'm the only one that makes my kind of sauce. So and a lot of people like it. I've gotten people who don't usually like hot sauce to like it because it's pain, but it doesn't last. And it's all real ingredients. I hand pick all the produce myself. I make them in small batches. I don't use any artificial flavors. I don't use any preservatives outside of like vinegar. Literally, it's all real fruit, all real veggies, and it's hand picked produce that I have to find myself, which makes my life an absolute living hell. So,
Yeah, I would. How important is that to you? You know, when creating and doing, you know,
I would
going out
rather,
and being
I would
hands
rather,
on.
yeah, I would rather not make a batch of hot sauce if I can't find what I need. It's that simple. Like I
Right.
just, it's, and I'm not going to be at that level. If I ever get to the point where I'm producing this on a mass scale, obviously I probably can't have that option. But for right now, while I have full control and while I get to make sure that I'm making each bottle that gets sent out and tasted by somebody, that I know what's in there to the T. So like, yeah, I'd rather not make a batch than not be able to find what I need pretty much.
Now, do you have a go-to produce place? Is it like
Yeah.
top secret?
No, I use my local. No, I use my local Whole Foods. So
There
I
you
mean,
go.
I if what sucks is that if I lived in like North Carolina, I'd be able to go to any local farm and say like I need a shit ton of habaneros, and they'd be
Right.
like, yeah, I got you. But I live in New York, so there's a whole time of the year, like half the year, when these farms are not pumping out produce like they were in the summer, and
Right.
even if they are, it's like year-round stuff like garlic and like onions and things that whatever. It's not fresh bell peppers. It's not fresh tomatoes on the vine. It's not stuff like that. So I use a local Whole Foods and I work directly with the produce manager, which is good and bad because they kind of hate me now. uh, because I'll call them and be like, do you have orange habaneros? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, how much do you have? And they're like, okay, well, I think we have like a 5-pound box. I'm like, do you have anything else? And they're just like, no, man, do you want to order a box? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I need to order. So I'll order actually directly through the produce managers
Wow.
now. And I'll get stuff from the stores that doesn't even hit the shelves. Because I need to. I can't, I'll go and I'll clean out their fucking shelf and I'll only get 2 pounds of peppers out of it. 2 pounds of peppers is a lot of peppers. 2 pounds of peppers is literally, I don't know, 110 orange habaneros or something like that.
Wow.
Like,
Okay.
yeah, so it's a lot of peppers. Peppers are light. So when I have to buy 7 pounds,
Wow.
that's a lot of peppers when you think about it. So yeah, but I do it directly through the produce managers. I would obviously like to work with local produce, but I just don't always have that option. And I'm even being denied from farmers markets now because I don't use all local products. Like a lot of the local farmers markets around here are now, they want to only really support like local farms and local produce. And I've tried to explain to them, like, I am local. I'm making the sauce in the county where I grew up. Like, and I'm
Right.
literally,
Yeah.
selling. I built a presence here. Like, that's why I was on the phone with a woman today, and she was like, "Well, what's local about your sauce?" I'm like, "Me." I'm like, "The sauce is
Right.
local.
Yeah.
Like, I am the local." And still, even she was like, "Well, send me the application. We'll see what happens." I'm like, "Okay." I'm not. What am I gonna do? So
Yeah, I would imagine that's tough because no one can kind of give you that promise or that amount and that quantity that Whole Foods can. So it's
yeah.
like, you know,
Well,
it's
also
tough.
the Whole Foods is still a grocery store, so like I have to pick through the entire box because there are a bunch of peppers that have black shit on them, or ones that
Right.
are
Yeah.
about to mold, or ones that are wrinkly, like a fucking 90-year-old ball sack. Like what? Like
Yeah.
there's things that you need to just fish out, and that was very visceral. Sorry, that was a very very descriptive response. But I forget that I'm not talking with another chef. So I don't know. I just it's not like local produce, but I do control everything that goes in, and I love that. So yeah, I would rather not make sauce if I don't know what's going in. Or like I did it one time. I made a batch with red habaneros because I just couldn't find orange habaneros, and I fucking hated it. It tasted
Yeah.
different. It was a little more watery. The sauce came out like more orange colored than it usually does, and I was like not about it. I'm like I hated it, and so I haven't done it since. I just
But I like that. I like your attention to wanting to put out something that you yourself could be fully behind and know
right,
that your hand was in every single ingredient, and
right,
that you're not putting something out into the world that's filled with, where we live in a world where there's so much out there that's filled with all sorts of processed stuff and sugar,
right.
excess stuff, where you're putting out a product that you believe in, and it's something that you yourself created.
Yeah, I mean, and I've started caring recently a little bit more about what we consume, especially at my house, because like
Right.
my wife and I, we haven't had, even before she was pregnant, we haven't had pre-shredded cheese
Mm-hmm.
in close to 2 years, because a lot of pre-shredded cheese has like anti-caking agents on it,
Yep.
because it's just like they need to make it not go moldy basically, and I hate that. And it also melts totally differently. So like we've
Right.
only ever been buying now bricks of cheese. Like even tonight, she made a whole Pyrex baking tray of enchiladas and topped the whole thing with this pepper jack cheese, and she shredded the whole fucking thing with a block,
Yeah.
with a cheese grater. And you know that's it melts better, it tastes better, it's just the cheese, there's no preservatives. Like it's a better way to do it. It's just more time consuming and it's not convenient, which people don't like. But we
Right.
also, we've started caring more about that stuff. I don't want unnecessary shit like that. There are certain things that I don't really mind going in my body necessarily, but like things like that. And like also we've tried to reduce like, anything that has like high fructose corn syrup. I try to
Right.
stay away from, because that's just like straight up poison for your body. But I mean, I love it. Like it's great. I'm fat. Like I love it. But also, um, yeah, like ketchup, right? That's something that we use multiple times a week
Yeah.
sometimes, and there's always high fructose corn syrup in ketchup. So we started buying like the organic Heinz, which is still not the best ketchup in the world, but it doesn't have the high fructose corn syrup that the regular Heinz does. So like to me, it's
Right.
worth it to spend the extra dollar on the bottle to not put that in our bodies. And we haven't really
Right.
tasted a difference. It tastes exactly the same. So it's like it's not going to change the taste of it. So
Totally. Now, congratulations, because I heard you
mhm.
say there's one on the way.
Yeah, October, she's having a baby boy. So
Awesome. How much, if at all, does that play in that role of being more conscious of what you're putting into your body as far as what you want to? Because I know for me, I have a daughter, and
right,
we pay special attention to that, where we grew up, and you ate what was there because it was there. The information wasn't there, but now the information is there.
right,
So we try and do that. We try and make sure that she eats in a way that is better.
right.
um, does the pull away from those things, like the high fructose corn syrup and all those other things, is that also in the back of your head too, wanting to push that forward
Yeah,
for?
of course, of course. I mean, when I was young, the dynamic of how I did it when I was young was like my parents were very big on not putting total shit into your body, right?
Right.
Like I only ever had whole wheat bread in the house. I never had white bread ever. And like my parents would never get, you know, the boxed anything, right? They wouldn't get anything that had crazy amounts of preservatives, like stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got older and I moved in with my wife, and I was like, what's Hamburger Helper? And she was like,
Mm-hmm.
she's like, you never had this? I'm like, no. She's like, not even just like as a snack, whatever. I'm like, no. And she made it. And I was like, this is fucking delicious. So then,
Right.
so then, like, then as I got older, I started eating more of that stuff as like a treat here and there, just because it was stuff that I never got to have, right? And
Right.
like, but no, as far as like when we have like a child, yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be very conscious of that. I'm also conscious of the fact that I want to try and curb my kids' possible future eating tendencies, and
Mm-hmm.
opening them to spices, right?
Okay.
So I think not spices, so like herbs and like dry
Mm-hmm.
herbs specifically, because a lot of those are, you know, hyperallergenic, you know, for the most part. Like they're not going to harm a kid. Like smoked paprika is not going to harm a child. You can't give
Right.
them a tablespoon of smoked paprika with a little tiny cup of sweet potatoes and be like, go to town. But like if you put a little bit in there to where it's like pretty masked, but it's still kind of hitting their palate, when they get older and they taste something that you cooked with your usual seasonings, they're not going to be like that and just want plain buttered noodles, right? So like my idea is I'm going to try to slowly, when he starts eating food, incorporates the way that she and I cook, the way that
Yeah.
she and I make meals, because then I want to be able to have the three of us sit down when the kid is 4, you know, and eat the same fucking dinner that the two
Yeah.
of us usually eat, you know. And so I realize that that's also a very big possibility that that won't happen because sometimes it just doesn't.
Right.
But that I would say I'm more conscious of than even the health aspect of it. I don't want my future child to have any inhibitions to try anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, because even not just me, also my wife, we've opened up a lot in the past 5 years as far as our palates and like what we'll try and what we'll eat. And her tastes have changed and mine have changed a lot. And I want our child to also experience that. And I
Absolutely.
know that the easy route, because she's been a nanny for 9 years, and
Mm-hmm.
she specializes in like, you know, newborns and like early childhood development and stuff. So I get how it goes. Believe me, like I know, like she's helped multiple families raise their children from being born. Like we know, you know, exactly how eating habits go. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to try to, you know, kind of expand that a
Absolutely.
little bit. You know, it's just, you know, why not? And there are some kids who just aren't like I was like that. Like with my dad, there was no separate dinner. It was
Right.
either
Yeah.
if you're not eating what's there, you're not eating. Like it's that simple. Like it was just
Yeah.
like that's how it was. It was like if you're not eating what we're eating, you're not eating. And like not when they're fucking 2, but like, you know,
Right.
when I was a little bit older, that's how this is how it was. And you know, like there was none of this, you know, the parents and one of the kids are eating dinner and then the second kid maybe is eating plain pasta with butter and cheese. Like no, there was none of that growing up. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. I was a different sort of kid. I always laugh. I wasn't a chicken finger kid. I was like, oh, I'm gonna have the lobster at this restaurant, or I'm gonna have the clams on the half shell when I'm, young. And I mean, I grew up eating things like liver and things like, the chicken hearts
Yeah.
and stuff like that. But it's funny you talk about like when we sit down and my kid is 4, my daughter's 4 now, and
Is she?
she's just now getting into eating a lot of the stuff that we will eat. She'll be like, I want the pasta with the spices this time. And the spices is a pesto sauce,
Right.
a pesto, or, it is the basil on the top, or, all of these things where, for the longest time, she ate Cheerios, she ate her buttered pasta, she ate
Yeah.
chicken fingers, and all these things. So it's exciting when you're cooking and you're doing all those things, and they're like, I'll try that lentil soup,
Right. Yeah,
or I'll
exactly.
try that, that casserole that you made, and you're like,
Right.
wait, really? And they're like, wow, I really love this. So it's really awesome when you finally get to that point. It might take some time, but
Oh,
I
it'll take
like
some time. Yeah.
I like
I'm
your
I'm trying to method that
integration. I like your thought of integration of like, throwing it in and
just
kind of,
like if you make, because I'm going to make my own like baby food when the kid starts
yeah,
eating baby food, like I'm obviously, and like but like if you blend up a bunch of sweet potatoes, what is the problem with, let's say you have two whole yams, like two whole giant sweet potatoes, right? That you blend up. That's a decent amount blended
Yeah.
up. And let's say you put, I don't know, a teaspoon, right? A literal teaspoon in all of that of like smoked paprika, right?
Right.
Is that really going to change it to the point where you're even like, whoa, smoky? Like, no,
Yeah.
not
No.
even, not even a little bit. It's going to be so subtle that you, with a refined palate, would have to be like, there's something in there, hold on. And then you know what I mean? So like if
Right.
you, my idea, and I haven't done this in practice, obviously, so I'm not claiming to be an expert for anyone that's going to call me that. But the idea that I have is like, if you put the smallest amount that is not harmful, obviously, probably a bad way to find out that the kid's allergic to paprika. But yeah, if you put the smallest
Right.
amount in there, taste wise, it's not going to make them be like, what is this? I just want it subtly on the palate a little bit
Right.
so that it's not so foreign when we finally try to sit down, all of us, to eat. But also the kid has to eat one way or the other. But again, this is probably a little later on and stuff. But yeah, so I don't know. I'm excited to try some stuff with kids. Hot Ones actually stole an idea of mine that I had for that, which was I don't know if you saw this, but they just recently made hot sauce for
Yes.
kids, and I had that fucking idea for so many years. I've literally been talking to my wife about it. And also it goes along with that what I'm talking about, which is like introducing spices to kids at like a young
Right.
age.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and then I just saw that they released that. I'm like, motherfucker.
Yeah.
So I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
that's, I was so annoyed. But I also, I mean, I'm annoyed, but I think it's great. I think that
Yeah.
a kid's hot sauce is like, it's incredible. Like,
I think it's cool. I think it was, a smart play by them as far as you always have the kid that's at the table going, I want to try that. And then the parent or somebody is going, no, you can't try that. I'm not going to give that to you. I'm not going to let you try that. You're going to burn your face off.
right.
But giving them something that they can access is really cool. I thought that was a cool move and a very smart move by them, of course, as from a marketing standpoint.
Yeah,
It was
absolutely.
definitely good on them. But so I have a few questions, if you don't mind, that I really want to get in because I'm
Yeah,
super curious from your point of view.
sure.
Cooking shows.
Hmm.
Are you into cooking shows? Are you not into cooking shows? And when I say cooking shows, I more so I think mean like the competition cooking shows.
I was going to ask, yeah. I, I had a period where I was, but I don't know, man. It's so, I think because I've had the experience of a reality show in my life before. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've been on a reality show
Okay.
before. I was on Ink Master. I don't know if you watch Ink Master or not.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so I got a tattoo on Ink Master, and so I've been behind the scenes on one of those competition shows, and you really get to see the dynamic of it, and then you realize that it's probably similar in other formats. So
Right.
like, it does take a little bit away from it, but I mean, I love food. I'll always watch those shows, but like, I don't religiously watch, Kitchen Nightmares or like
Right.
Guy's Grocery Games. Like, I don't watch usually that. I like more of the one-on-one YouTube videos of
Right.
somebody cooking something, like Munchies, right? Is the food sect of Vice Media,
Right. Yeah.
and Munchies is what got me into cooking more. I mean, that's where I first saw Action Bronson and Maddie Matheson and these chefs that
Right.
I fucking love. And it was a new look at food. And they were also showing you, food in certain cultures. And they were going to Scotland just to drink fucking Buckfast, which is this tonic wine it's like
Right.
weird things that I like stuff more like that, where I can watch, a chef cooking something for 15 minutes and have it shown that it is possible, basically. The competition shows are great, but I like the idea of watching a chef cook something that you are alone are watching and they alone are cooking, and you be like, yeah, that is within my realm of possibility.
Yeah, for sure. Like, give me like as far as cooking shows, give me the OG Iron Chef dubbed, English dubbed, um, like with the original Iron Chefs,
Yeah.
and I could watch that all day with
Mm-hmm.
the insane ingredients that cross those
I did
plates.
love Iron Chef. The one show that I loved more than anything, aside from Iron Chef, because I loved Iron Chef, it was great. Especially back in like the early 2000s, like that era of
Yeah,
Iron Chef was fucking great. Along with the late 90s and early 2000s, though, the show that my family and I would watch a lot was Emerald.
Yeah, yeah,
Emerald Live was fucking great because it was this tiny little dude from Massachusetts, this Ewok looking motherfucker that just
yeah,
fucking, was screaming and throwing garlic powder and salt into dishes and going bam and fucking shit. And like,
yeah,
he was in front of this crowd of people cooking and they were cheering him on. It was like a fucking concert.
yeah,
And like, so that was one of the first cooking shows I remember being like, like damn, like just like, oh my God, so yeah, I mean that was one that I always watched. And yeah, Iron Chef was another one. And I consumed from the time I was young because of my parents, pretty much everything Anthony Bourdain ever put out.
right,
He was like one of my idols, pretty much. Even before I got into cooking, I used to just want his job. I'm like, the
right,
man
yeah,
he gets to travel and eat and write about it. Like it was literally a dream job,
yeah,
And so I don't know, which is also a great thing about mental health, which I've talked about on my show as well, which is just proof that when people say like, I don't get why this happened, like he had the perfect life, I'm like, don't fucking say that. Like, no, he didn't. Like,
yeah,
you don't it does not matter. That shit does not matter because, true, pain and depression and stuff, it does not have the boundaries of, oh, well, I've got a lot going for me. Like
right,
it
yeah.
does not.
No,
And I
doesn't
mean,
mean
I don't
anything.
have to tell you that. Obviously, you know
Yeah,
that better than anybody. So like, you know, I've talked about that before on my show a little bit, which is because I love him. And I was literally devastated when,
yeah, I would imagine.
we found out what happened. And, it's just, it's even so, he was Anthony Bourdain. He was one of the most well-known food people in history. And he was celebrated and he was beyond rich. And he had an 11-year-old daughter at the time he killed himself. So like,
Yeah,
there's a bunch of reasons why somebody could have easily justified not doing it, but that still didn't happen. And that alone is just proof that, having the best life does not matter. It's about you and it's about what's going
yeah,
on between your eyes. But yeah, I pretty much consumed everything Anthony Bourdain ever put out because I loved him and I loved how completely punk rock he was when it came to food. I mean, the fact that he did an episode of, I want to say No Reservations, where he went to Rome and the whole episode was in black and white. Like
yeah, yeah,
he did a fucking food episode in black and white.
yeah.
You realize how insane that is? Like, I was about to make one of my reels. I think I even wrote this in one of my captions for one of those like nice videos I just put up with my camera. That I
Hmm.
was literally going to make it black and white and do it as a homage to him and like talk about it. And I'm like, I'm never going to be able to top that Rome episode. I don't care, whatever. Like, I was just like, I'm not going to
Yeah,
get that existential like right now.
that's an amazing thing because you think about like how much that guy was a rock star in that industry because you think of cooking shows, it's bright colors. You want to see that.
Always,
You want to see that meat turn a different color or that
yeah.
thing, or they're sitting there bland, keeping that broccoli green as could be. And then here he comes and he's like black and white. You're gonna like it because it's different and
Well, that
it's
was also a
me.
statement on what, yeah, and it was also a statement on what he was trying to accomplish, which was always what he was trying to accomplish, which was it's not about the food, it's about the people. And like he was relentless in telling people to go to these places in the
Right.
corners of the world and eat the food and talk to locals and find out why they started cooking the food. Like if they're cooking a certain cuisine, it's because, like there's an episode of Parts Unknown, which is his most recent one that he was filming when he died.
Mm-hmm.
And it's on, I don't know if you have HBO Max, but it's on HBO Max. And you should watch the one in Japan when he's with Chef Masa. Chef
Okay.
Masa, you may know from New York City as Masa, the
Right.
most expensive sushi restaurant in, oh, I don't know, the fucking country, literally. Um, Chef Masa is one of the best chefs ever to live, specifically sushi chefs. He went back to Japan with Anthony Bourdain, and they went into this woodsy cabin house, like in the area where he grew up. And there's just this open fire pit that's also a barbecue in the middle of the room that's like heating the living room and also what they're cooking on. And he's just cooking fish that they caught in the river. And he was like, this is literally how I used to cook. This is how I, so like he's taking a chef who is the most celebrated sushi chef for making the most decadent, beautiful plates that cost somebody sometimes $600 a person to
Right.
fucking eat there. And he broke him down to cooking a fish that they got out of a river on top of a living room barbecue. Like
That's incredible.
that to me is amazing. Like, because that's just proof that he was really about, this is why these people love food, but this is why this food exists. And
That,
he was always a huge advocate for that, which is why I loved him, which is why that episode was in black and white, because he wanted people to emphasize not the food, the people
right.
and
Yeah.
the city itself. And that, sometimes, you need black and white to make you look at texture and make
Right.
you
Yeah.
step outside of the grand illusion that is, fucking food TV. So
I like what you said there. Like, look at the people, because like when you talked about Munchies and Vice, and we think about guys like Matty Matheson and Action Bronson, how important, like, coming up and looking at them, you know, seeing people, and Anthony Bourdain, seeing people that looked and felt like you. And what I mean by that is tattooed, right? Like when I think of Matty, he's
oh yeah.
tattooed as could be, and he's not, you don't look at him and go, that guy is going to cook me the most fancy meal in the world. You're looking at it going like, oh, does that guy work here?
Yeah,
um
exactly.
how important is that to the representation of seeing people that look like you and seeing people that maybe go against the norm of what we think of?
I think it goes back to also Anthony Bourdain with that, with Kitchen
Yeah.
Confidential, which was Kitchen Confidential, by the way, one of my favorite books ever written. And I listening to it on tape on like Audible with Anthony Bourdain reading it is something I
Mm-hmm.
do as like comfort, because hearing his voice again genuinely makes me feel better. But
Mm-hmm.
also hearing that book read by him is another experience. And in that book, he emphasizes how the kitchen was a place for misfits. It was a place for people who didn't have any other options, or a place for people who only belonged in that setting. So
Right.
like when you become a part of that world and you can identify with that a little bit, and as far as like being in the only space that really has hit you like that, right? Like I have a 9 to 5 job that's not in food, and I do well at it, and but like when I'm in a kitchen and I'm, especially if I'm like catering and I'm the chef for the day, like there's nobody above me, whatever, and it's a feeling that just I can't replicate
Right.
ever again. And it's like I don't know, it just I think I self-identification with seeing people like that projected, it's important. But I think the reason it's important is because it reminds you that food is universal. It
Right.
reminds you that food is art and can be created by anybody who looks any way whatsoever.
Right.
Whatsoever. I mean, Maddie is a fucking nut job. He's crazy. Like he's literally insane.
Yeah.
I mean, the man had a fucking heart attack at 29 years old because of the amount of partying and cocaine that he did. Literally, like he's been
Right.
sober
Yeah.
since he's been in his 30s because he literally had a heart attack at 29. And I mean, this dude used to do 15 shots at one time and drop 6 tabs of acid at the same night. Like he was nuts. And even then, he wasn't like a shitty cook, but now he's like older, he's got a family, and like he's making all these shows where he's cooking comfort food. He's cooking food that people love to eat.
Right.
And, even seeing somebody like him do that, like with a family, it just shows you that like you can have your artistic vessel be whatever the hell you want it to be.
Right.
And I think that's part of the identification process as well. So,
For sure. One thing I'm interested in, what is like an ingredient or a thing right now that you feel is all hype and not as great as it is, and what is something that you feel is like slept on that you wish more people were either eating, using, or doing?
ooh, that's a great fucking question. Um, I mean, the classic ones that people always bitch about, like truffle oil,
Mm-hmm.
not truffles, truffle oil, which is barely made with truffles.
Right.
Um, it's for a long time there was just truffle oil and truffle in everything. You saw truffle, like truffle French fries, like truffle fries. If I see those, I usually get annoyed, only because I've had truffle fries. I get it, man. You just made French fries and you put some truffle oil on them. Like, whatever. That's fine. This is not Maria in New York City. I'm not going to get fresh truffles shaved on top of my pasta. Like, I'm getting it
Right.
at a fucking burger joint. And for some reason, they're charging me, $13 for these for these fries because there's
Right.
truffle oil on them. So truffle oil has always been one that I think has pissed off a lot of like chefs. Um, I use it relentlessly. Balsamic glaze is another like caterer's like vital tool,
Mm-hmm.
because it's this thick syrupy reduction of balsamic that is super sweet and can be applied to anything savory or sweet necessarily. Um, like one of the best treats ever, if you ever want to try it, is get some vanilla bean ice cream and put some balsamic glaze on top of it.
Mm.
It's the best thing ever. But yeah, balsamic glaze, an ingredient that I think more people should be using actually a spice, and it's a spice blend from Japan. It's called furikake. Furikake
Ah, yep.
is now furikake is not a secret. A lot of people know about it, but the people that know about it know why they know about it. Furikake is the it's what everything bagel seasoning wants to be. It is like it is a better version of everything bagel seasoning. It is this dried seaweed with dashi and bonito flakes and some seaweed and some nori and sesame, and it's meant as like technically a rice topping. So you just put it on plain rice and it makes the rice taste fucking incredible. Like there's flecks of this sesame blended seaweed in there. But furikake is something that I feel like if more people use, they would get a huge umami bomb that they didn't even know about.
Yeah.
And that's something that I really try to get as many people to buy as I can. And I've gotten people to buy it. I have like foodie friends in other states that I've forced to buy it. And, my friend Haley got it and she was just like, I literally blew through the fucking jar in like a week. Like, I'm like, yeah,
Right.
I know. So that's definitely one that I think more people should utilize. Absolutely. So.
Well, if you're listening, go out and buy some. I've had it and it's absolutely delicious.
It
I
is,
was,
right? It's like it's a more umami packed everything bagel seasoning.
yeah.
It's like I was making those ramen hacks for a while and I was putting everything bagel seasoning on it because that's what, TikTok told me to do. And
Right.
then I bought furikake and I was like, what the fuck have I been doing? Like I literally
Right.
I bought it and I was like, I don't know what I was doing before then. Like literally. So yeah, that and the other one would be fish sauce.
Yeah. That's it.
So
That's a good one.
because
I
fish
like,
sauce, cooks know about fish sauce. Fish sauce is a weird one. It does not taste out of the bottle how it tastes once it's cooked out. So the smell of it will throw a lot of people off. The taste of it, if you sip it out of the bottle, will really throw a lot of people off. But when it gets cooked into dishes and comes up to temperature, it releases this crazy umami that you didn't even know existed. It releases this essence of flavor in dishes that just makes them more rich and just adds so much layers, so many layers to a dish. And a lot of people don't buy it because it says fish sauce,
right.
and it's just I don't know. There's also a lot of I've talked about this on my show too because I'm also a huge fan of David Chang, and he
Mm-hmm.
talks a lot about this because he's of Korean descent, and he grew up in Virginia as somebody who had a Korean family, and so for him, he's used to being one of the people with like the smelly lunches as he calls it, quote unquote.
Right.
And there's a lot of like racism when it comes to like Asian foods, like
Mm-hmm.
the fact that people think MSG is actually bad for you, right?
Right.
MSG is just a seasoning salt. That is it. It is monosodium glutamate. That is it. It's just a fucking seasoning salt. It literally, the purpose of it is to bring flavor out of things. It goes into food and rips apart the molecules that pack in the flavor,
Right.
like literally goes in there and pulls it out. Like it is a great tool. But and people are like, I don't want the MSG, whatever, or they say racist, horrible things like Chinese food syndrome, which is like a huge thing in New York, which it does not exist. It's just pure fucking racism. But MSG is in fucking Doritos. So like anybody who says they
Right.
don't need MSG, if they have a bag of Doritos, they need to shut up because MSG is literally, it's like you can look
Right.
on the bags. It literally says monosodium glutamate, like right on the back. So I think there's a lot of those things that should be used more, but people don't because of just how they were raised or inhibitions or, what their predisposed notions of it maybe were. So.
Absolutely. So before we get out of here, there's one
Yeah.
thing I like to do at the end, and I kind of like to kind of put it on you a little bit. And I love curiosity. It's something that as I've gotten older and now that I've started this, I've become very curious. And I always feel like having curiosity um, helps you have hope, helps you, for people who feel like they're hopeless, get curious and go find something to be curious about, because where there's curiosity there can be hope. What's got you curious right now? Does anything have you like, are you curious about anything? Do you have anything coming up that you're like, oh man, I'm so curious about this, I want to know? Or is there anything that maybe you're curious about me or anything like that?
Well, definitely curious about you, but but no,
We'll
I
save
think
that for your podcast.
yeah, exactly. I mean, the number one would be fatherhood. I'm going to be a dad in October, and I'm curious because it's weird. I mean, I've been with my wife for coming up on 11 years
Mm-hmm.
in December. We've known each other since she was like 14 and I was 15. So like we've known each other for literally more than half our lives. and now we created a fucking human together. So like, I'm curious because I was able to, produce a person with literally my favorite person in the world. The person who is my best friend, the person who puts up with all my shit, the person who deals with, me catering for 11 fucking hours on a Saturday when we don't really get time together during the week. I got to expand my family. And so I'm curious how that's going to affect me as a person, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm also curious as to how I'm going to approach it because I'm extremely excited, but I'm also I don't know. There's this level of curiosity of just how I'm gonna be because I already find myself getting extremely like protective and kind of like very kind of like I don't know. You look at situations differently. So fatherhood would definitely be one. I would say the main one. I think
Absolutely.
because I don't know what the fuck is gonna happen, but I don't know. It's because I think it's because I am in this situation where I got to, do this and expand my family with the person who I wanted to more than anyone else in the world. And
Yeah.
so that adds a different layer to it as well. When you have 11 years together with somebody, you do a lot and you know each other well and you experience a lot and you go through, ups and downs. And, we have moved in multiple places and, we've both been through, traumatic experiences and stuff. And like, so when you have all that built up, and then you expand your family because the two of you love each other to that point to where you genuinely want to have another person. I'm not saying this is the route that everyone should take, by the way. I'm not
Right.
saying that. I'm just saying in my specific situation. So I don't know. It's just I think that's what I'm most curious about how that's gonna, kind of play out a little bit. It's yeah. I mean, it's not, sorry, that's not food related, but yeah, it's
No, it doesn't have to be. I think that's a just a perfect thing because I mean, I'll tell you this, 4 years ago, I was in your exact same shoes and the hype is real.
that's what I've heard.
Every
I've heard that. Yeah.
everyone that tells you your life will change as soon as that kid comes is absolutely telling the truth. It is the most wonderful, beautiful thing. You never knew you could care and love the way you do when you look at that kid, and you want every great thing in the world. You'll beg, borrow, steal, do whatever it takes to get them it. Um, and I definitely think that's an awesome thing to be curious about and continue to be curious about, and don't stop being curious about it, because I think it in turn helps your kid, view the world in a way that is great. To be just curious, right? Like,
Yeah.
be
Well, there's a
curious
great
about
there's a,
other people, be curious about food, be curious about different cultures, whatever it might be
right.
curious.
There's a
Don't.
great quote from Walt Whitman that says, "Be curious, not judgmental,"
Mm,
and I like that a lot. I love Walt Whitman as well. I mean, Leaves of Grass is like one of my favorite things ever. And yeah, that quote though, I have that in my office actually, because I don't know, I love it. Like I feel like me lowering my inhibitions and hesitancies in the past like 5 years, especially, has expanded my friend group. It's expanded how I view the world. It's expanded who I talk to, how I talk, how I operate,
mm,
like, how I think other people should be treated and how I treat other people. I think it's a better way to be. And I'm also guilty of not being like that all the time. And I try
right.
to, so no one's perfect. I'm not the perfect human. I'm not the perfect, like husband. There's a lot, everyone is human. Everybody makes mistakes. But I try to remember that, which is why I try to be as positive as I can, even if it's somebody who I'm talking to who I don't really even know that well, because what the fuck do you have to lose? What does it matter? Like,
Yeah,
like find out why they're doing what they're doing. Talk to somebody. You never know, what a person can do for you and what you can do for them ever. So, you know,
absolutely. I love that. Well, Chris, I thank you. I appreciate your time. It was wonderful to talk to you. Good luck becoming a father. I'm sure you're going to do amazing, amazing things. And I look forward to getting my hot sauce and trying it out.
yeah. I actually, it's gonna ship out tomorrow because you ordered the big bottle,
Hell
and
yeah, I
I had
did.
I had the wrong boxes, so I packed it, and then I like placed it on the table to go to the post office, and I heard like the glass hit the table a little bit, even with like bubble
Gotcha.
wrap around it. And I was like, no, I'm like, I'm like, no, because this is going, unless I'm mistaken, this is going to the other side of the country. Like this is, you're in,
No, I'm
where
in
are you?
Massachusetts.
Oh, you're in Massachusetts. All right. Well, still, even so, you're a couple states over from me. Where in Massachusetts, Spats, if you don't mind saying?
Central Mass.
Oh, Central.
So
Okay.
yeah, so right outside of Worcester.
Oh, Worcester, as they say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Worcester.
Worcester. Yeah. No, my wife has family in like Acton, and I have
Oh,
friends that are
okay.
from like,
Yeah, that's not far from me.
yeah, and I have friends that are from Western Mass and stuff like that, like Springfield and stuff like that. So like, yeah, we go there a lot. So, but yeah, it's Worcester. So I like that.
But thank you. I appreciate it. I look forward. I'll definitely I'll write a nice review once I get it.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much, man. I'm
All
glad you
right.
had me on. This has been awesome.
Absolutely.